This is CBN NewsWatch.
It is Wednesday, August 5th. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, it looked like a nuclear explosion, the massive blast in Beirut, killing at least 100 people and wounding thousands more. We're going to hear from our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell about what this means in the Middle East. How the coronavirus outbreak has changed the way millions of Americans go to church. While some churches have reopened, many have remained closed, and some don't plan on reopening until next year. It's a church called Nashville Life, and its music is provided by a worship band also called Nashville Life. We talked to the group's leader about their new album. And plans are moving ahead to honor the legendary evangelist Billy Graham with a statue in the Capitol in Washington, D.C. All those stories and more are ahead in this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I want to begin this half hour with that incredible explosion in Beirut. It's being called Lebanon's 9/11. One day after the worst disaster in its history and a country already on the verge of collapse. The Lebanese people are devastated by the tragedy. Chris Mitchell has the story now. He's reporting from Jerusalem on a catastrophe that will have consequences throughout the Middle East.
It looked like the explosion of an atomic bomb. One Lebanese official said the aftermath looked like Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Scenes reminiscent of 9/11 filled the port area and the streets of Beirut's downtown. Eyewitnesses told CBN News it felt like an earthquake, and the blast could be heard 150 miles away in Cyprus. It knocked out glass in buildings for at least 5 miles.
And then suddenly we heard a very loud explosion. The glass shattered all over the cars around us, the buildings, all the glass just went down. It was raining glass all over the city of Beirut.
The blast devastated the port, where most of Lebanon's imports and food enter the country. The casualties are staggering. Scores died and thousands were wounded in the explosion. Many are still missing, and bodies are being found in the rubble. Hospitals are overwhelmed, and the Lebanese government is asking for international help and medical supplies. Lebanon's prime minister promised justice for those responsible.
What happened today will not pass without accountability. Those responsible will pay the price for this disaster. This is a promise for the martyrs and the injured.
Lebanon's head of security said nearly 3,000 tons of ammonium nitrate that had been stored at the port for 6 years exploded. President Trump said U.S. generals told him it might have been an attack.
Our prayers go out to all the victims and their families. The United States stands ready to assist Lebanon. We have a very good relationship with the people of Lebanon, and we will be there to help. It looks like a terrible attack.
It came at the worst time. The blast, a colossal blow to a country that was already on the brink of collapse after years of mismanagement and corruption. Their currency has collapsed. Their economy was devastated with one of the worst debt ratios in the world. Then COVID-19 hit. Before the pandemic, tens of thousands of Lebanese took to the streets to demand a new government, and many have already fled the country. The blast will affect the wider Middle East, and questions remain. Will the government remain in power, and how will Lebanon rebuild? Isaiah the prophet said one day Lebanon would be a fruitful field, but right now the Lebanese are facing more misery. Church leaders are asking for prayers for the Lebanese people as this Middle East country faces the toughest time in its history.
And Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem. So, Chris, what are you hearing from people on the ground?
Well, Ephraim, somebody summed it up in this line. He said, years of warfare compressed in just 1 second. The devastation is apocalyptic. What does it look like? He was telling me that, it's like a sea of glass for miles. He was riding from east to west Beirut. He said that people are overwhelmed, and people right now are just trying to get shelter and protect their property. The port infrastructure has literally, Ephraim, been destroyed. So the question remaining right now is how will they get get their supplies through. That's the main port that everything comes into Lebanon. The army right now is everywhere. They're trying to protect against looting. And right now, people are just trying to survive. But I would say also, Ephraim, that the people right now are furious. There's a deep anger against the government right now because they feel that they're responsible for this and for the corruption that's been plaguing Lebanon for years. Right now, there's a relief phase that will take months. But there's a recovery after this blast that will likely take years.
Can you tell us more? What are people saying about who may be responsible for this?
Well, as we said in the report, the head of the Lebanese security says it was nearly 3,000 tons of ammonium nitrate that exploded. The question is, who stored that? Was it Hezbollah? Was it an Iranian arms depot like Al Arabiya is reporting? President Trump says he quoted the U.S. generals that said it might have been an attack. Some people say it could have been sabotage or simply an industrial accident, but really it would be malfeasance and malpractice if you would have that kind of explosive materials sitting there for 6 years before something like that would come up. Now, right away after the explosion, a lot of people wanted to blame Israel. Israel said it's not responsible. Lebanon actually has said the same thing.
Your report details a series of problems and catastrophe the country's facing. How will Lebanon bounce back?
Well, that's a great question, Ephraim. Right now, the economic impact of the corruption and the mismanagement for years has been just tragic. And like I said, there's deep anger against the government, and not only the government, but Hezbollah, which is basically a state within a state. They believe that they've robbed the country, and really people don't know. They just don't have any money. The currency has lost maybe 80% of its value. Hyperinflation is there. 190% since 2019. Just in March, the government defaulted on a $90 billion loan. So the currency, the crisis is astronomical, and the economic impact, unemployment is rising. You can just imagine what's going to happen after this. I would just add, Ephraim, you know, Lebanon and the history of CBN go hand in hand. Middle East television used to broadcast out of South Lebanon back in the 1980s up till May 2000. And right now, unfortunately, Hezbollah has maybe 150,000 rockets there in South Lebanon.
What do you think this means for Hezbollah and Israel?
Well, we talked earlier today. There was a briefing with a retired IDF general. He said it's unlikely right now that Israel and or Hezbollah would want a war. Hezbollah has enough problems right now of its own, and Israel doesn't want to get involved into a land war with Hezbollah right now. Interesting, Israel offered aid to that, and that contact that I had in Beirut, he said the one nation that really can provide the best humanitarian aid to Lebanon is Israel. Right now, where I'm standing, I'm just 150 miles away from Beirut. It would be easy to take a convoy up there. Unfortunately, because of what's political situation, that's not possible. But just let me add this one thing, Ephraim. The church is really reaching out right now in food and supplies to people there. They're asking for prayer so they can be a blessing during this critical time in Lebanon's history.
All right, our Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you so much for being with us, Chris. Back here at home, President Donald Trump is making it clear, although there are serious concerns about mail-in voting for the presidential election, some states are far more prepared to handle it than others. Monday, the president criticized Nevada for trying to rush to put together a mail-in process before November. But Tuesday, he pointed out Florida is better prepared because it has been doing it for years.
It's different from other states. I mean, in Nevada, where you have a governor, he said, let's just send out millions of ballots, and the post office cannot be prepared. I haven't spoken to the post office about it, but I don't know how they could possibly be prepared. Florida has been working on this for years, and they have a very good system of mail-in, and that would be absentee or even beyond absentee.
Some states have already had problems. The recent congressional primary in New York led to election officials being overwhelmed with mail-in ballots, taking weeks to count some of them in some cases. And California rejected more than 100,000 mail-in ballots in the March presidential primary. At least 6 people are dead and millions are without power as Tropical Storm Isaias has moved up the East Coast. The storm plowed into the Carolinas and traveled all the way to New England. Isaias caused nearly 4 million power outages. The storm produced tornadoes, heavy rain, and wind gusts of more than 100 miles an hour. Officials project the Schuylkill River in Philadelphia will crest today over 15 feet. That is the highest level in more than 150 years. In Delaware, Joseph Hicks says the high winds destroyed his home, but he's grateful he and his family are still alive.
As we were approaching the basement, I saw the tree lifting up out of the ground. And at that point, that's when I saw the whole back of the house coming off of the property. First thought is, thank God that we're here. God spared my wife, and my boys, so we're here. So I can replace a house.
As the storm moves out, flooding is still a big threat in some parts of the country. Coming up, the coronavirus has had a significant impact throughout America, including churches. But while other parts of the country are reopening, many churches remain closed. We're going to show you how that is affecting millions of believers when we come back.
Sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Get the top political news and analysis from Washington on Faith Nation, tonight at 6 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel.
And welcome back to CBN Newswatch. In the early days of the coronavirus outbreak, churches shut their doors to keep their members safe. Now, more than 5 months later, many are still closed, either by government order or by choice. As Charlene Aaron now shows us, there's widespread uncertainty of when those churches will open again.
As churches across the country grapple with how to safely reopen their doors, some pastors say they won't resume regular services until 2021. That's a big change from earlier this year, when many thought the coronavirus shutdown would only last a few weeks.
When COVID-19 forced houses of worship to end in-person services, many switched to streaming church online. While some have resumed traditional Sunday services, a growing number of pastors say the virus remains too much of a risk. Andy Stanley of Atlanta's North Point Community Church recently announced plans to continue virtual services for the rest of the year. Stanley, who leads the 40,000-member congregation, says he can't ensure people's safety for in-person services. Others, like Pastor Brian Tome of Cincinnati's Crossroad Church, agree.
We're not going to go back in buildings for the rest of 2020.
As the COVID uncertainty stretches into August, the number of people watching online services has also declined from the record numbers seen 4 or 5 months ago. According to a recent Barna survey, 32% of practicing Christians have stepped away from digital worship.
They're dealing with grief or they're dealing with depression. People are just thrown off their rhythms, and they're just hanging on as best as they can. And that means they're dropping away from things they used to do, unfortunately, like go to church or stream services.
In order to bring people back, Pastor Tome has moved services from his megachurch to the surrounding area.
We're having community events at all of our buildings. We're a multi-site church. We're also having live events at a park in Cincinnati. Social distancing, people wearing masks.
God lifts us up. He pulls us up.
Southern Baptist President and Pastor J.D. Greer recently pivoted to house churches.
We need to become, from now until at least the end of the year, basically a movement of house churches. Instead of the Summit Church being 12,000 people meeting in 12 locations on the weekend, now we're going to be about 15,000 people meeting in about 2,400 locations. Our primary focus moving forward is going to be gathering together in small groups for worship and prayer, in homes, multiple families.
Meanwhile, most spiritual leaders say they're willing to reopen their buildings if and when cases drop. Until then, they're holding out hope that these new ways of ministry will lead to greater opportunities.
I would love if there was some miracle move of God and we could open up at Christmas. I would love that. God's doing a new thing, and the more energy and effort we spend thinking about the old thing and structuring for the old thing and complain that we don't have the old thing, the less we're going to actually have something for the new thing.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Still ahead, Nashville Life Worship Music Band provides the soundtrack for Nashville Life Church, and now the worship group has its first full-length album. We're going to talk to its award-winning leaders right after this.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
On the Home Front, Tuesday morning at 10:30.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government.
My focus has been trying to really make sure we have the future leaders we need for the bench and the bar and for society generally.
You'll learn from highly credentialed leaders who are current and former judges, distinguished scholars, and ACLJ counsel.
I'm so glad I chose Regent. The relationships here have been amazing. The faculty have been amazing. Not everybody's called to the same thing when they leave law school, but they're called by God who has a purpose for their lives, and He is going to use that education to make a difference in the world.
Regent will prepare you to be a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer. To start your rewarding law career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July. Apply today.
Nashville Life provides the weekly soundtrack for Nashville Life Church, and the worship band has now released its first full-length studio album. The project is called Here for Jesus, and band leaders Alvin Love III and Dwan Hill spoke to us about it on Studio 5.
Just think of one good time that you've been blessed. I'm sure you can find one thing that God has done for you.
That's a fresh yet familiar sound from Nashville Life, a church worship band and recording artist with a new project. Here for Jesus.
This is your first studio project for Nashville Life?
It is. Our last two have been live, and this one was an in-studio album. Yeah.
Was it intentional to take us back to the 70s?
Yeah, intentional, kind of progressively. We started writing some songs, specifically the single "Sing a Song" started in that era in terms of style and genre and sound.
Sing a song to the one who's been loving us since forever. Sing a song to the one who's been there our entire life.
The masterful music makers behind this unique gospel sound are Dwan Hill and Alvin Love III, who together earned Grammy honors for their work with gospel great CeCe Winans.
We just started talking about maybe pushing that further and writing more songs that specifically would be influenced by the 70s, and that turned into the record.
What's been the response? I know it's only been a few days. What's been the response thus far?
So far, it's been good. First off, our church, Nashville Life, they've been responding really, really enthusiastically. And then just friends and family and just comments on Instagram and social media, YouTube. I've just been seeing people talk about how much they appreciate how different it is. And it's been pretty nostalgic. A lot of my friends' parents are really loving it. I think the are really getting some nostalgic vibes with the 70s references.
Now, I have to ask, since you mentioned your friend's parents, what about your mom and dad? For people who don't know, your mom is CeCe Winans, who you produce for, and Dwan as well produced for. What'd she say?
She loves it. They actually just had an 8-hour road trip the other day, and they said they were listening to it on repeat, and they had a little dance party in the car. So they FaceTimed me from the car, and she was just screaming and dancing to it. So I think they like it a lot.
One of my favorite things is still to sit at a piano and just play some of my favorite songs. Something about those black and white keys that just give me joy and peace.
When not leading worship at Nashville Life Church, Dwan is also a recording artist and music director.
Dwan, you have served as music director for CeCe Winans as well as Lauren Daigle. What's the difference in working music in your church versus working with some of those beautifully talented solo artists?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, church happens every week, every day. Church doesn't stop. It's interesting. Lauren's situation, she only has to do ministry in the stage sense of things, venues, show, travel, when there's an event booked, whereas church happens every Sunday. And so if you think about it, we're doing a new show every week, new arrangements, new songs, new camera. I mean, it's just everything every week.
New team members.
New team members. Yeah. So Lauren goes out with the same band, same singers, same sound people. Ours rotates on a weekly basis. So when you really think about it, it requires the grace of God and the power of God that it actually happens at the level that we need it to happen, or I believe that God wants it to happen.
All glory, all glory, all glory to you, Lord. All glory, all glory, all glory to you, Lord. Yeah.
Here for Jesus is a follow-up to Nashville Life's hit live recording called Taylor House Sessions. That project produced a Billboard Top 5 single, and it earned the band the Dove Award nomination for the song My God, which featured Mr. Talkbox. Both albums are available right now wherever you get your music. For more uplifting entertainment stories, be sure to check out an all-new Studio 5 tonight. We're going to talk to the people behind the award-winning documentary Boy State. Rebecca St. James will join us to talk about her return to music after a 9-year absence. And we have your first look at the Disney Pixar film Soul. You can catch Studio 5 tonight at 9:30 Eastern on the CBN News Channel. Coming up, The design of a new statue has been approved. It will portray the legendary evangelist Billy Graham, and it will stand in Washington, D.C. We're going to tell you about that when we come back.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
No super falls, man. Come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes too, and so much more. Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Check out the CBN News Daily Rundown podcast each weekday with me, Caitlin Burke. Click on the show tab at cbnnews.com where you can listen and subscribe.
A life-size statue of evangelist Billy Graham is scheduled to replace a statue of a white supremacist in Statuary Hall of the U.S. Capitol next year. Religion News Service reports a North Carolina legislative committee has endorsed a model of the statue of the famous evangelist. During his evangelistic career, Graham integrated his evangelistic outreaches and his teams, and he consulted with Martin Luther King Jr. The final version of the statue will be 10 feet tall. It will portray Graham as he appeared in the 1960s, preaching and holding a Bible in one hand. The Graham statue will replace one of a former governor of North Carolina. The hall contains 100 statues of outstanding U.S. citizens. Each state can place 2 statues in the collection. Time now for your Wednesday word, and today's word is peace. Remember this: Jesus is the calm before the storm, the peace in the storm, and the refreshing after the storm. Take comfort in that promise and trust Him to be just that: your peace, your calm, your refreshing. With that word, be sure to make this a wonderful Wednesday. That will do it for this edition of CBN Newswatch. Remember, you can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel, and you can find them there at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us. The address is right there on your screen, newswatch@cbn.com. And, of course, we're available on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at any time. Hope you will join us again right here next time. I encourage you to make this a wonderful Wednesday and join us again right back here tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody.